Waitress gets ridiculed because of the scar on her face. Then a millionaire appears and, hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. The soft hum of conversation filled the air, with the clinking of silverware echoing through the restaurant. The warm lighting cast a golden glow over the elegantly set tables, each one adorned with pristine white tablecloths. It was the kind of restaurant where every dish was a masterpiece, and every guest seemed to fit in perfectly. But for Emma, it felt like the world was closing in. She stood near the back of the restaurant, adjusting her apron and trying to steady her nerves. The reflection of her figure in the window beside her reminded her of how out of place she felt. Her dress, though neatly pressed, was second-hand, and her shoes were scuffed from the long hours of standing. Her fingers trembled slightly as she wiped down the table in front of her. She had promised her best friend, Jenny, that she would give this blind date a chance. But deep down, Emma wasn't sure she belonged in such an upscale setting. She took a deep breath, trying to push the negative thoughts aside. Just get through this, she reminded herself. She checked her phone one more time for the table number. Table 7, she whispered, trying to reassure herself. Her heart pounded as she walked through the restaurant, scanning the room for the man she was supposed to meet. Her eyes landed on a sharply dressed man sitting alone at a table near the back. He looked absorbed in his phone, and she hesitated for a moment before walking over. "Hi, you must be Kevin?" she said, offering him a nervous smile. The man looked up, startled for a brief second, as if confused. His brow furrowed, but after a moment, he gave a small smile. Hi, Emma," he replied, clearly not sure what to make of the situation. Emma sat down across from him, still feeling the tension in the air. She had misread the situation. This wasn't the man she was supposed to meet, but he was here, and it was too late to back out now. "Blind dates are always awkward, right?" she said, trying to lighten the mood. "Jenny told me you might be a little shy, so don't worry, I can do most of the talking." The man, whose name was Liam, smiled faintly. "Right, blind dates are something else," he said, his voice steady but with a hint of amusement. The conversation continued, though Emma was still trying to gather her thoughts. She shared bits of her life, her job as a waitress, the struggle to make ends meet, and her dream of one day opening her own art studio. She noticed that Liam seemed to listen intently, far more than any man she had met before. There was a warmth in his eyes, something different from the usual polite disinterest she encountered on these kinds of dates. But then, her phone buzzed. A message from Jenny. "Hey Emma, where are you? I'm at table 7. Emma's face went pale as she looked up at Liam, her heart sinking. "You're not Kevin, are you?" she asked, the embarrassment rushing over her. Liam's smile faltered for a brief moment, guilt flickering in his eyes. "No, I'm not," he said quietly. Emma's cheeks turned red with mortification. She stood up quickly, muttering an apology. "I'm so sorry. I've made a mistake." She turned to leave, but Liam stood up as well. "Wait, it's fine," he called after her, but she was already out the door. The cold air hit her like a shock, and she hurried down the street, hoping to escape the awkward situation. As she walked away, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had just let something special slip through her fingers. Waitress gets ridiculed because of the scar on her face. Then a millionaire appears, and Emma's steps were quick as she walked down the cold, rain-soaked streets of the city. Her breath came in short bursts, the brisk air biting at her skin. She tried to shake off the embarrassment that had overwhelmed her moments ago. How could she have made such a mistake? How could she have embarrassed herself so thoroughly? It was just another instance where she didn't belong in a place like that, in a world so far removed from her own. As she reached her small, cramped apartment, she unlocked the door and stepped inside, the familiar smell of old wood and dust greeting her. The apartment was a far cry from the luxurious restaurant she had just walked out of. The dim lighting and peeling wallpaper spoke to the years of wear and tear, and Emma had long grown accustomed to its imperfections. She tossed her jacket on the couch and slumped into a chair, burying her face in her hands. The weight of the moment pressed heavily on her shoulders. Her life seemed like a series of mistakes strung together by fleeting moments of hope. She had promised herself that things would get better, that one day she would be able to leave this life behind. But tonight, the reality of her situation seemed even harder to ignore. She sighed deeply, trying to calm her nerves. As she sat in silence, her phone buzzed, pulling her out of her thoughts. It was a message from Jenny, her best friend. "Hey, are you okay? You seemed kind of upset earlier." Emma stared at the screen for a moment, unsure of how to respond. She typed a quick reply, telling Jenny that she had just made a mistake and that it was nothing to worry about. She didn't want to admit how badly she felt. She didn't want anyone to know how much she hated her life sometimes, how much she hated the way people treated her because of the scar on her face. That scar was a constant reminder of everything she had lost. Her mind wandered back to that day, years ago, when the accident had happened. The memories were still vivid flashes of the crash, the screeching of metal, and the terrifying feeling of being trapped in the wreckage. She had been in the hospital for weeks, trying to recover both physically and emotionally. The scar on her face was a permanent reminder of that day, of how her life had changed in an instant. Emma had always tried to keep a brave face, to move forward despite the judgment she knew people passed on her. But tonight, in the restaurant, with the way the guests had whispered behind her back, she felt small. She felt invisible in a way that no one should have to feel. She shook her head, trying to push the dark thoughts away. Maybe she just needed to sleep, to forget the events of the night. But as she lay in bed, her mind wouldn't stop racing. The face of the man at the restaurant, the one she had mistakenly sat with, lingered in her thoughts. He had been kind, even if he didn't know the real reason she had been sitting there. She thought back to his smile, the way he listened intently to her as she rambled on. His presence had been a quiet comfort, something she wasn't used to. And then, of course, there was the other detail that lingered in her mind. The fact that he had been so well dressed, so polished. He had seemed out of place in her world, in her small, humble life. She tossed and turned, her mind refusing to settle, until finally, around midnight, she drifted into an uneasy sleep. The next morning, Emma woke up to the sound of her alarm ringing insistently. The early morning light streamed through the window, casting long shadows across the room. She groggily reached for her phone to check the time, realizing she was running late for her shift. She rushed to get ready, pulling on her uniform and grabbing a quick breakfast. As she stepped out of her apartment, she noticed the chill in the air, the promise of another cold day ahead. She walked to the bus stop, her mind still heavy with the events of the night before. But when she arrived at the restaurant, something unexpected happened. The moment she stepped through the door, the manager, who usually ignored her, greeted her with a smile. "Emma, good to see you today. We've got a special guest arriving soon, and I need you to serve him personally." Emma blinked, confused. A special guest? She had never been asked to serve anyone important before. She nodded, trying to hide her surprise, and made her way to the back to get ready. Little did she know, the special guest who was about to arrive would turn her life upside down in ways she could never have imagined. Waitress gets ridiculed because of the scar on her face. Then, a millionaire appears and the restaurant was bustling as Emma hurried around, carrying plates and refilling glasses of water for the guests. Her mind, however, was somewhere else. She kept thinking about the strange interaction she had had with Liam the night before. He had seemed so calm, so kind, but there was something about him that didn't quite fit. Was he really just a regular customer? She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to him. The feeling that she had missed something important lingered in the back of her mind. As she moved from table to table, she couldn't help but wonder why the manager had asked her to serve the special guest. It wasn't typical for her to be singled out for anything. In fact, most of the time, she was just a face in the crowd, unnoticed and unimportant. But today was different. Emma tried to brush off her thoughts, focusing on her work, but the unease wouldn't go away. Then, around noon, the door to the restaurant swung open, and in walked a tall man with sharp features and an air of confidence. He was impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his posture straight and commanding. Emma's heart skipped a beat. Could this be the special guest the manager had mentioned? She tried to push the thought away, but couldn't ignore the way the man's eyes swept over the room. It was almost as if he were scanning for something or someone. As he walked toward the reserved table by the window, Emma's stomach churned. She knew it. He was the same man from last night, the man she had mistakenly sat with. Liam. The realization hit her like a ton of bricks. She had no idea why he was here, or what he wanted, but she couldn't shake the feeling that this was a moment that would change everything. The manager approached Liam and greeted him with an air of respect that Emma had never seen before. "Mr. Parker, it's a pleasure to have you back," the manager said, offering a warm handshake. "Mr. Parker." Emma's mind raced. Liam Parker, it clicked. The name of a well-known entrepreneur, the CEO of a successful tech company, and a man whose wealth and status were the stuff of legends. How could she have sat with him last night and not even realized who he was? She felt a flush of embarrassment creep up her neck, but she quickly pushed it aside. It wasn't the time to dwell on her mistakes. Instead, she focused on her duties, trying to maintain her composure as she walked over to the table. "Good afternoon, Mr. Parker," she said, her voice steady but tinged with nervousness. Liam looked up from his menu, his eyes locking with hers. For a brief moment, his expression softened, and a faint smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "Hello, Emma," he said, his voice smooth and calm. "I didn't expect to see you again so soon." Emma felt her heart race, but she quickly masked her surprise with a professional smile. "I didn't expect it either," she replied. "Is there anything I can get you to drink?" She tried to act casual, but inside her mind was spinning. Was he here to make fun of her? To remind her of the embarrassing mistake from last night? But instead of the coldness she feared, Liam simply nodded and ordered a drink. As she turned to leave, he called out to her. "Wait a second, Emma." She froze, her heart pounding in her chest. Had she said something wrong? Had he noticed the way her hands trembled? "I just wanted to say," he continued, his tone warmer now, "I was really impressed with your honesty last night. You were genuine, and that's something rare." Emma blinked, taken aback by his words. She didn't know how to respond. Thank you," she stammered, still unsure if he was teasing her or being serious. "I'm just trying to be myself," she added quietly. He smiled again, and for the first time, Emma felt a spark of something other than embarrassment. It was the faintest glimmer of hope, a feeling she hadn't experienced in a long time. She quickly composed herself and left to place his order, but as she walked away, she couldn't help but replay the conversation in her mind. Why had he been so kind? Why had he noticed her at all? The rest of the day passed in a blur, with Emma trying to focus on her work, but her thoughts kept drifting back to Liam. Why had he made such an effort to speak to her? And what did it mean that he had recognized her from the night before? By the time her shift ended, she was exhausted, both physically and mentally. As she clocked out, the manager called her over. "Emma, great job today. Mr. Parker wanted to leave a tip for you," he said, handing her an envelope. She took it, still unsure of what to make of the situation. She opened it and found a generous tip, along with a business card. The name on the card read, "Liam Parker, CEO, Parker Enterprises." Her breath caught in her throat. This wasn't just a kind gesture. This was something more. Something that felt like the beginning of a change she hadn't seen coming. Waitress gets ridiculed because of the scar on her face. Then a millionaire appears and... Emma stood in the small back office of the restaurant, her hands gripping the edge of the desk as she stared at the business card in front of her. Liam Parker. The name on the card was bold and crisp, the company title beneath it looking far too impressive for someone like her. She hadn't even known who he was last night when she had sat at his table by mistake. He had been polite, genuine, and kind. But now she realized just how out of her league he was. The tip he left her was generous beyond anything she had ever imagined. It wasn't just the money, it was the thought behind it. And yet, she felt a strange sense of unease. Why had he singled her out? Why did he notice her at all? Was it pity or something else? Emma's mind was in turmoil. She had spent her life being ignored, overlooked, and underestimated. To be seen, truly seen, by someone like him was almost too much to process. She didn't belong in his world. She didn't even know how to navigate it. But as the evening wore on, she found herself unable to shake the feeling that this encounter was significant, that it was somehow a turning point. The next morning, when Emma walked into work, She couldn't help but wonder if she would see Liam again. She told herself not to get her hopes up. He was a millionaire, after all. He probably left town already, or was too busy to think about someone like her. Yet, as the day wore on, her thoughts kept drifting back to the moment she had spent with him. His eyes had held an unexpected warmth, and his words had been genuine. He hadn't seemed like the kind of man who would throw money around carelessly or use his wealth to make others feel inferior. He was different. By the time her shift ended, Emma was mentally exhausted. But as she was about to leave the restaurant, she was called over by the manager. "Emma, Mr. Parker is here. He requested to speak with you," he said, a hint of surprise in his voice. Emma's heart skipped a beat. Liam was here? She couldn't believe it. She hadn't expected him to show up so soon, let alone request to see her. She quickly smoothed down her apron and walked toward the front of the restaurant, her palms sweating. When she reached the table where Liam was sitting, she hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to approach him. He looked up and smiled warmly, the same smile she remembered from the night before. "Emma," he greeted her, his voice calm and friendly. "I hope I didn't catch you at a bad time." Emma shook her head, trying to mask the nervousness that threatened to overwhelm her. "No, of course not. How can I help you, Mr. Parker?" She still couldn't believe she was standing in front of him, addressing him as Mr. Parker. He smiled again, this time with a more playful glint in his eye. "Please, call me Liam. I wanted to talk to you about something." Emma raised an eyebrow, curiosity piqued. "What's that?" "Well," he began, "I've been thinking about our conversation last night. You mentioned your dream of opening an art studio." Emma nodded, surprised he remembered. "Yes, I've always wanted to create a space for people to explore their creativity. But I'm not sure how to make it happen." Liam leaned back in his chair, looking thoughtful. "I think it's a great idea," he said. "I'd love to help. In fact, I want to invest in your dream, Emma." Emma stared at him, unable to believe what she was hearing. "You want to invest? But why?" Liam's smile softened. "Because I believe in what you're doing. And I think the world needs more people like you, people who aren't afraid to be themselves, to take risks. You've got something special, Emma, and I want to help you realize your potential." Emma was stunned into silence. This was more than she had ever imagined. She had dreamed of owning her own studio, but she never thought it could be a reality. "But why me?" she finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "There are so many people out there more qualified than I am. You could invest in anyone, Liam." He shook his head. "It's not about qualifications. It's about heart. And you've got that. I can see it in you." Emma didn't know how to respond. She had always been the one who had to work for everything, to struggle through life on her own. But here was someone offering her a chance, a way out of the endless cycle of work and survival. "I thank you," she said, her voice catching in her throat. "I don't know what to say." Liam smiled again, standing up and offering her a hand. "You don't need to say anything. Just think about it. Take your time." As he turned to leave, he added, "I'll give you my contact information. If you decide to take me up on the offer, I'm here to help." Emma watched as he walked out of the restaurant, her mind racing. She had no idea what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, she felt like there was hope on the horizon. She clutched the business card tightly in her hand, knowing that this was a moment she would never forget. Waitress gets ridiculed because of the scar on her face. Then a millionaire appears and... Emma sat at her small kitchen table, the business card still in her hand. She had hardly slept the night before, her mind running in circles about the offer Liam had made. A part of her wanted to say yes immediately after all. Who wouldn't want the chance to fulfill their dreams? But another part of her hesitated. Was she really ready for such a big change? Could she trust someone like him? Someone with so much power and wealth? She looked down at the card again, running her fingers over the embossed letters. Liam Parker, CEO of Parker Enterprises. She had never imagined that someone like him would even take notice of her, let alone offer to invest in her future. The thought was overwhelming. The life she had known, working long shifts at the restaurant, scraping by, living in this tiny apartment, felt like a lifetime ago. She had always dreamed of something more, but dreams felt distant when survival was the priority. And now, here she was, with an opportunity to change everything. She set the card down and pulled out her phone. She needed to talk to someone, to get their perspective. Jenny, her best friend, had been with her through thick and thin, and Emma knew that she would understand. She dialed Jenny's number and waited as the phone rang. "Hey, Emma, how's it going?" Jenny's voice was cheerful on the other end of the line. Emma smiled despite herself. "I'm okay, but I need to talk to you about something. Something big." Jenny's tone shifted immediately. "That doesn't sound like okay. What happened?" Emma took a deep breath before telling Jenny everything. The meeting with Liam, the business card, the offer to invest in her dream of opening an art studio. She told Jenny everything she had been thinking, all the doubts and fears that had been swirling in her mind. "I don't know what to do," Emma admitted when she finished. "This is the chance of a lifetime, but it feels like too much. I'm not sure I belong in that world. I've spent my whole life trying to survive, not succeed." Jenny was silent for a moment, and then she spoke with a calmness that Emma found reassuring. "Emma, you've always had this dream. You've worked so hard to get to where you are. Maybe this is the universe telling you that it's time to take a leap." "But what if I fail?" Emma whispered. "What if I can't live up to his expectations? Or worse, what if I disappoint myself?" Failure is part of the journey, Emma. It's not about being perfect. It's about trying, about giving yourself the chance to grow. You're capable of more than you think. Don't let fear hold you back from what could be your best opportunity. Emma nodded, though Jenny couldn't see it. She knew her friend was right. It wasn't about perfection. It was about stepping out of her comfort zone and embracing what was possible. "Thanks, Jenny," Emma said, her voice a little steadier now. "I needed to hear that." "Anytime, Em. You've got this. And don't forget, you're not alone in this. I'll be cheering you on every step of the way." Emma smiled, feeling a little lighter. After hanging up, she sat quietly for a few moments, contemplating her options. The fear still lingered, but it wasn't as overwhelming as it had been. She knew she had to make a decision, but more importantly, she had to trust herself. The next morning, Emma woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. She dressed in her best clothes and, for the first time in a long while, felt like she was walking into something new. She was going to meet Liam again, to talk about the next steps in turning her dream into a reality. As she walked into the restaurant, the familiar hustle and bustle of the morning shift surrounded her. But this time, she didn't feel quite as out of place. She had a goal, something to work toward. And for the first time, she wasn't just surviving. She was ready to take a chance. When Liam arrived, she greeted him with a calmness that surprised herself. He smiled warmly at her. "I'm glad to see you again, Emma. Are you ready to talk?" Emma took a deep breath. "Yes, I am." She sat down across from him, the weight of the decision still present but no longer paralyzing. "I've thought about your offer, and after some reflection, I've decided to take you up on it." Liam's eyes brightened, and he leaned forward, his expression sincere. "I'm so glad to hear that. You won't regret it," Emma nodded, feeling the shift within herself as she spoke the words. "I don't know what the future holds, but I'm ready to give it everything I've got." And in that moment, she realized that the chance she had been waiting for had finally arrived. This was her moment to step into the life she had always dreamed of. No more hiding, no more fear. Just the possibility of something greater than she had ever imagined. Waitress gets ridiculed. Because of the scar on her face, then a millionaire appears, and Emma felt a strange mixture of excitement and nerves as she walked into the small office in the back of the restaurant. The decision she had made just days ago now felt real. She was no longer just a waitress struggling to make ends meet. She was about to embark on something that could change her life. The door creaked open, and she found Liam sitting at the desk, his laptop open in front of him, reviewing some documents. When he looked up and saw her standing there, he smiled, his eyes warm with a touch of encouragement. "Emma, I'm glad you could make it," he said, standing up to greet her. She smiled back, but her nerves were undeniable. "Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here," she replied, trying to steady her voice. Liam motioned to the chair across from him. "Please, take a seat. Let's talk about your vision." As Emma sat down, she felt an odd sense of calm wash over her. This wasn't just another day at the restaurant. This was the beginning of something new, something important. "I've been thinking a lot about your dream of starting an art studio," Liam began. "I want to know what it really means to you, what you envision for it." Emma took a deep breath, her mind racing as she tried to put her scattered thoughts into words. It's always been my dream to create a space where people can express themselves, where they can feel safe to explore their creativity. I've always believed that art has the power to heal, to bring people together. She paused, unsure if her words were coming out the way she wanted them to. But I've always felt like it was too big of a dream, like it was something I could never reach. Liam listened intently, his gaze never wavering. He seemed to understand, to see beyond her doubts. "Why do you think that?" he asked, leaning forward slightly. "I think because I've always been on the outside. I've never had the resources or the connections. I've always been in survival mode, just trying to get by. The idea of actually making this happen, of running my own studio, feels impossible." Liam nodded thoughtfully, his expression soft but serious. "Emma, I know it feels overwhelming, but sometimes the best ideas come from people who have had to fight to get where they are. You've already proven that you have the drive and determination to make things happen. What you need now is support, and that's what I'm here for." His words felt like a lifeline, something she had never expected to find. He believed in her. He believed in her dream. Emma swallowed the lump in her throat. "But I don't know how to start," she admitted. "I've never run a business before. I don't even know where to begin." Liam smiled reassuringly. "That's where I come in. I'll help you with the business side of things, the logistics, the planning. I know the ins and outs of running a company, but you, Emma, you have the passion, the vision. That's the hardest part." Emma felt a surge of hope, something she hadn't felt in years. She had always dreamed of creating a space like this, but she had never imagined it could actually happen. And now, with Liam's help, it felt within reach. "So, what's the next step?" she asked, her voice more confident now. "First," Liam said, "we'll need to come up with a detailed plan for the studio. We'll talk about location, budget, and what kind of programs you want to offer. After that, we'll work on getting funding and start looking for a place." Emma nodded, absorbing everything he was saying. It felt like a whirlwind, but it was a whirlwind of possibilities. "I'm ready," she said, her voice firm with determination. "I want to make this happen," Liam smiled, standing up and offering her his hand. "I believe you can. Let's get started." Over the next few weeks, Emma worked closely with Liam to flesh out the details of her dream. She found herself at his office more and more, sitting across from him as they brainstormed, planned, and worked on the logistics of making the art studio a reality. For the first time in her life, she felt like she was truly moving forward. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was building something, something that was hers. But with every step forward, doubts crept in. Was she truly ready for this? Was she capable of handling the responsibilities of running a business? And more importantly, could she ever fully believe in her own abilities? She knew that she had to keep pushing through those doubts. This was her chance, and she wasn't going to let fear stop her. One afternoon, as Emma sat in the office with Liam, going over some financial projections, she realized something. She wasn't just working for a dream anymore, she was living it. And with Liam by her side, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she could really make this work. "This is just the beginning," she said to Liam, looking up from the papers in front of her. "I know," he replied, his smile genuine, "and I'm excited to see where it takes us." Emma smiled back, her heart filled with hope for the future. This was only the start of her journey, but she knew that with determination and support, she could turn her dream into a reality. Waitress gets ridiculed because of the scar on her face, then a millionaire appears, and Emma's heart raced as she walked into the small office, carrying a folder full of ideas for the art studio she had dreamed of for so long. She had worked closely with Liam for the past few weeks, planning every detail of the space from the layout of the rooms to the types of art programs they would offer. But today, something felt different. She wasn't sure if it was the anticipation of finally seeing her dream take shape, or the fact that the next step involved something bigger than she had ever imagined. As she entered the office, she found Liam standing by the window, looking out at the city below. He turned when he heard her footsteps, and his smile was warm, as always. "Hey, Emma, ready for today?" he asked. She nodded, trying to push the butterflies in her stomach away. "I think so. I've got everything we need for the meeting with the investors." Liam gave her an encouraging nod. "You've been working hard. I'm proud of you." Emma felt a rush of gratitude, mixed with nervousness. She had never imagined herself in a position like this, presenting her ideas to investors who could make or break her dream. The thought of it made her stomach flip. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," she admitted. "I've never done anything like this before. What if they don't believe in me?" Liam stepped closer, his expression serious but kind. "Emma, you've already proven that you have the drive, the passion, and the vision. This is your dream. And you've got to show them that you believe in it as much as I do." Emma took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She had to trust that she could do this. She had come this far, and backing out now wasn't an option. As the meeting time approached, Emma and Liam made their way to the conference room. The investors were already seated at the large, polished table, their expressions unreadable. Emma took a seat next to Liam, trying to calm her racing thoughts. She had spent so many years just surviving, just getting by. And now she was about to stand in front of people who had the power to make her dreams come true. She couldn't let the nerves take over. Liam introduced her to the group, and for the first few minutes, Emma's mind was a blur of words and expectations. But as she began to speak, her voice grew stronger, more confident. She talked about the vision for the studio, the space for people to come together, to create, to find healing through art. She spoke about the importance of community and how the studio would offer programs that catered to everyone, from young children to seniors. As she talked, she could see the investors starting to lean in, their interest piqued. She was holding their attention. That realization gave her the boost she needed. By the time she finished, she felt like she had said everything she needed to say. She sat back, waiting for their response. The room was quiet for a moment, and Emma's anxiety flared up again. Had she said enough? Was it good enough? Finally, one of the investors spoke up. "I'm impressed," he said, his voice thoughtful. "You've clearly put a lot of thought into this, and your passion is undeniable. I think there's potential here." Emma's heart skipped a beat. Could it be? The others chimed in with their agreement, nodding their heads and offering positive feedback. For the first time, Emma felt like she wasn't just fighting to survive, she was fighting to thrive. She was building something that was hers, something that could help others. After the meeting, Liam turned to her with a smile. "You did great," he said. "I knew you could do it." Emma felt a mix of relief and pride. She had done it. She had stood up and believed in herself, and now, things were starting to fall into place. "Thank you, Liam," she said, her voice full of gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you." Liam shrugged, but there was a glint in his eye. "You did all the hard work. I just helped you see it through." As they walked out of the conference room, Emma felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time, she felt like she was on the right path. The dream she had held on to for so long was no longer just a dream, it was becoming a reality. And with Liam's support, she knew she could make it happen. Little did she know, the challenges were only just beginning, but she was ready. She was no longer just the girl working as a waitress, hiding behind a scar. She was Emma, the woman who was about to make her mark on the world. Oh, Waitress gets ridiculed because of the scar on her face, then a millionaire appears and Emma's heart fluttered with excitement and fear as she entered the newly leased space for her art studio. The place was huge, much larger than she had imagined. It was the kind of space she had always dreamed of, with high ceilings and large windows that bathed the room in natural light. For the first time in a long time, Emma felt like she was standing on the edge of something incredible. The last few weeks had been a blur. The meeting with the investors had gone better than she had ever hoped, and with their support, she was able to secure the funding she needed to transform the empty warehouse into a fully functioning art studio. Liam had been there every step of the way, guiding her, offering his expertise, but never pushing her too hard. He had always believed in her, even when she had doubts about herself. As Emma looked around the space, she could hardly believe how far she had come. Just a few months ago, she had been waiting tables, unsure of her future, hiding behind her scar. Now, she was on the brink of building something that could change her life forever. She walked over to the corner where the canvas for the first mural was going to be set up. The mural was going to be a centerpiece for the studio, something to inspire people the moment they walked through the door. She had spent weeks planning it, sketching ideas, and working with local artists to bring it to life. This was more than just a business. This was her passion, her way of giving back to the community, her way of proving to herself that she was worthy of more than the life she had known. As she stood there, lost in thought, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, her heart sinking when she saw the name on the screen. It was from her old boss, the manager of the restaurant she had left behind. She hesitated for a moment before answering. "Hello? Emma, it's been a while. I just wanted to check in and see how you're doing," the manager said, his voice smooth but with an edge of something Emma couldn't quite place. "I've been hearing some things about the art studio you're opening. I just wanted to make sure you're not getting in over your head." Emma felt a wave of irritation wash over her, but she kept her voice calm. "I'm doing just fine. Thank you for checking in." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then the manager continued. "Look, Emma, I don't want you to get hurt. You've always been a good worker, but this isn't the kind of thing you can just jump into without experience. You're not really cut out for running a business." Emma's grip on the phone tightened, but she didn't let his words get to her. She had heard this kind of talk before, people doubting her, underestimating her, trying to tell her what she could and couldn't do, but not anymore. She had come too far to let anyone drag her down. "I appreciate your concern," she said, her voice steady. "But this is something I've thought long and hard about. I'm not just jumping into this. I'm building something that matters, something that can make a difference. I don't need your approval, but I've got it under control." There was a long pause before the manager spoke again, his tone colder now. "I just want you to remember that you're not the only one who has dreams, Emma. Some dreams are better left as dreams." With that, he hung up. Emma stood in the middle of the empty room, feeling a mix of frustration and determination. The conversation had stirred something in her, but it didn't make her doubt herself. It only made her more determined to prove him wrong. She wasn't just some waitress with a scar on her face. She was Emma, the woman who had taken a chance on herself and was going to make her dream come true. She had learned that people would try to tear her down, that there would always be people who would tell her she wasn't good enough. But she had also learned that those people didn't matter. What mattered was that she believed in herself. And with Liam's support and the community she was starting to build, she knew she had the strength to overcome any obstacle. A few days later, the first art class took place at the studio. Emma was nervous but excited as she greeted the students who had signed up for the first round of programs. The room was filled with eager faces, each person there for their own reason. Some were looking for a creative outlet, some were looking for healing, and some were simply looking for a place to belong. As Emma walked around the room, checking in on each student, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. This was it, the beginning of something real, something that was hers. She glanced over at Liam, who had arrived to check on things. He smiled at her from across the room, giving her a thumbs up. Emma smiled back, her heart swelling with gratitude. He had been there for her every step of the way, and now, as she looked around the room, she realized just how much she had grown. She had come so far, and she wasn't about to stop now. This was only the beginning. The rest of her journey was just starting to unfold, and she was ready to face it with everything she had. The studio, her dream, was alive, and so was she. Waitress gets ridiculed because of the scar on her face, then a millionaire appears, and Emma's heart raced as she stood at the front of her art studio, watching the first group of students file in for their class. It had only been a few weeks since the opening, and yet everything felt so surreal. The studio was buzzing with energy, filled with people eager to explore their creativity. Emma had always wanted to create a space like this, where anyone could come in and express themselves without judgment. But standing there, seeing it actually happening, was something she couldn't quite wrap her mind around. As the students settled into their seats, Emma greeted each one with a smile, trying her best to make them feel comfortable. The air was filled with the sound of chatter as people discussed what they hoped to get out of the class. Emma was busy making sure everything was set up when she felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to find Liam standing there, looking as composed as always, but with a soft, encouraging smile on his face. "How's it going?" he asked. "It's going well," Emma replied, her voice filled with excitement. "I can't believe this is real. I've been dreaming about this moment for so long, and now it's happening. It's overwhelming, but in a good way." Liam nodded. "You've worked hard for this, Emma. I knew you could do it." His support meant more to her than he could know. She had never had someone believe in her the way Liam did. But, as she glanced around the room, a small knot of doubt formed in her stomach. She had never run a business before, and now, with so many people depending on her, the pressure was starting to feel real. What if things went wrong? What if the dream she had worked so hard to build crumbled before her eyes? "Hey, don't overthink it," Liam said, as if reading her mind. He placed a hand on her shoulder, giving her a reassuring squeeze. "You've got everything under control. Just remember why you're doing this." Emma smiled at him, grateful for his words. "Thanks, Liam. I really needed to hear that." He gave her a small wink. "Anytime. You've got this." As the class started, Emma found herself falling into a rhythm. She guided the students through their first art project, giving instructions and offering encouragement as they worked. It was a far cry from the days when she was just waiting tables, feeling invisible and unimportant. Now, she was the one leading, guiding others through the creative process. For the first time in years, she felt truly seen. By the end of the class, the students were beaming with pride as they showed off their finished pieces. Emma couldn't help but feel a swell of happiness. This was what she had always wanted, to help others find their own voice through art. As the students left, thanking her for the experience, Emma felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This was only the beginning, and she couldn't wait to see where it would lead. But the reality of running a business began to set in over the following days. She had to deal with the logistics of scheduling, making sure the space was prepared for each class, and handling the finances. The weight of responsibility pressed on her shoulders, and for the first time, she started to question whether she was really cut out for this. One evening, as she sat at her desk, staring at a stack of paperwork, the phone rang. Emma glanced at the caller ID and saw that it was from her old manager, the one who had doubted her so many times before. She hesitated for a moment, but then decided to answer. "Hello?" she said, trying to keep her tone neutral. "Emma, it's been a while." The manager's voice came through the line, smooth and calculated. "I heard about your art studio. I just wanted to check in and see how things were going." Emma felt a surge of annoyance, but she kept her cool. "It's going well," she replied, keeping the conversation brief. "I'm managing everything." "I'm sure you are," the manager said, his voice laced with skepticism. "But you know, running a business isn't as easy as it seems. There's a lot more to it than just opening the doors and hoping people show up. You might be in over your head." Emma's grip on the phone tightened, but she refused to let his words shake her. She had worked too hard to get to this point. "I appreciate your concern, but I'm fine. I've got a good team, and things are going well. I've learned a lot." The manager paused, clearly not expecting her response. "Well, just remember that not everyone is cut out for this kind of thing. It's a lot of work, and it doesn't always turn out the way you expect." Emma felt the familiar sting of his judgment, but this time, it didn't hurt as much. She had come too far to let his words knock her down. "I'm not worried about failure," she said firmly. "I'm more focused on making this work, and I will." There was a long pause before the manager spoke again. "I guess we'll see. Good luck, Emma." With that, he hung up. Emma sat there for a moment, the weight of the conversation settling over her. But this time, instead of letting it discourage her, she felt a renewed sense of determination. She wasn't going to let anyone make her doubt herself, especially not someone who had never believed in her to begin with. She had a dream, and she was going to see it through, no matter what. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she knew that with hard work, determination, and the support of the people who truly believed in her, she could make it happen. Emma stood up from her desk and looked out the window, the city lights twinkling in the distance. This was her moment, and she wasn't going to let anyone take it from her. Oh, Waitress gets ridiculed because of the scar on her face. Then a millionaire appears, and Emma woke up to the sound of her phone ringing, its shrill tone pulling her from a deep sleep. She groggily reached for it, glancing at the screen. It was a call from the accountant she had hired to help manage the studio's finances. Her heart skipped a beat as she answered. "Good morning, Emma." The accountant's voice came through, crisp and businesslike. "I wanted to give you an update on the studio's financials." Emma sat up in bed, trying to shake off the remnants of sleep. "Okay, go ahead. How are we looking?" "Well, there are a few issues," the accountant began, and Emma's stomach dropped. "Your expenses are higher than projected. You've spent more than expected on renovations and supplies, and there's been some delay in payments from your clients. It's nothing catastrophic, but we need to figure out how to manage the cash flow in the coming months." Emma felt a wave of panic rise in her chest. She had been so focused on making the studio a success, so excited about the students and the classes, that she hadn't fully grasped how much the financial side of things could affect her. She took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Okay, thank you for letting me know. I'll look into it and see what we can do. Please keep me updated." After hanging up, Emma sat still for a few moments, staring out the window at the city below. The reality of running a business, the stress of managing finances, the weight of responsibility was starting to feel overwhelming. She had wanted this so badly, but now that she was in it, the pressure seemed unbearable. She thought about all the late nights, the planning, the effort she had put into building the studio. Was it all going to fall apart? Could she really pull this off? As the day wore on, Emma found herself preoccupied with the financial concerns. She had scheduled meetings with vendors to discuss payment plans, and she knew she had to take immediate action to avoid any further financial strain. But it wasn't just the money that weighed on her. It was the doubt that had crept into her mind, the fear that she wasn't cut out for this. She had always been someone who had to fight for everything, to prove herself time and time again. But now, standing at the helm of a growing business, she felt like an imposter. She wasn't sure she had the strength to keep going. That night, as Emma sat alone in her small apartment, she felt a familiar sense of loneliness. It wasn't just the silence of the apartment that bothered her. It was the sense that she was carrying all of this on her shoulders alone. She missed the days when things were simpler, when she could just focus on working hard and getting by. But now, she had to worry about payroll, expenses, and whether or not her dream would survive. Just as she was about to lose herself in the worry, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text message from Liam. "Hey, I know things have been a bit hectic for you lately. I wanted to check in and see how you're holding up." Emma smiled softly at the message, feeling a rush of relief. She had come to rely on Liam more than she had realized, not just for his guidance in business matters, but for the support he had given her in everything. He believed in her, even when she didn't believe in herself. She typed out a quick reply. "It's been tough. I'm dealing with some financial stuff right now, and I'm starting to feel a bit overwhelmed." Within seconds, Liam's response came. "I'm here if you need to talk. And don't forget, you're not in this alone. You've got a whole team behind you, me included." Emma's heart warmed at his words. It was true. She wasn't alone. She had people who believed in her, people who were there to help her, even when the road seemed uncertain. The next morning, Emma woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. The problems were still there, but she had a plan. She called her accountant, scheduled meetings with the vendors, and began to strategize how she could turn things around. It wasn't going to be easy, but she knew it was possible. She had always been a fighter, and she wasn't about to give up now. Over the next few weeks, Emma worked tirelessly to address the financial issues. She made tough decisions, cut back on unnecessary expenses, and worked with her clients to get the payments back on track. Slowly but surely, the studio started to stabilize. She even began to see a steady flow of new students enrolling in the classes. The stress didn't disappear entirely, but Emma began to feel a sense of control again. She was moving forward, one step at a time, and through it all, Liam remained by her side, offering advice and support whenever she needed it. But just as things seemed to be getting back on track, a new challenge arose. A rival art studio opened up just a few blocks away, offering similar classes at a lower price. Emma could feel the competition heating up. She knew she couldn't afford to lose the momentum she had worked so hard to build. The pressure was mounting once again, but Emma was determined not to let it break her. She had already come so far, and she wasn't about to let anyone take away the dream she had fought so hard to achieve. The road ahead was uncertain, but she knew one thing for sure: she was ready to face whatever came next. Waitress gets ridiculed because of the scar on her face, then a millionaire appears, and Emma stood at the front of her art studio, looking out at the space she had worked so hard to build. The chairs were arranged neatly, the walls adorned with the work of local artists, and the room was filled with a quiet energy. It had been months since she had taken the leap into opening the studio, and while things were going better than she could have imagined, there was still the constant pressure of competition. The new rival studio that had opened just a few blocks away was starting to gain traction, and Emma couldn't ignore the mounting sense of concern that she was losing her edge. She had poured her heart and soul into the studio, but now, with this new competitor, the fear of failure was creeping in. The last few weeks had been a whirlwind of trying to keep things steady. Emma had spent countless hours meeting with clients, managing schedules, and organizing new programs, but it was beginning to feel like no matter how much effort she put in, it wasn't enough to stay ahead. She knew she had to act fast. The phone buzzed on the counter, interrupting her thoughts. It was a message from Liam. "How's everything going? Need to talk?" Emma smiled faintly at the text. Liam had been her rock throughout this entire journey. His belief in her had never wavered, even when she doubted herself. She typed back quickly. "Could really use your advice. Things are a bit tough with the competition. I feel like we're falling behind." Almost instantly, Liam replied, "I'll be there in an hour. Hang tight." True to his word, Liam arrived within the hour. Emma greeted him with a mixture of relief and anxiety. "I don't know what to do," she admitted as she led him into her office. "This new studio, it's taking some of our clients. I can't let that happen. I've worked too hard for this to just lose it." Liam nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "You're not going to lose, Emma. You just need to refocus. This is a challenge, but challenges are part of growth. Let's think strategically about how you can stand out." Emma listened intently as Liam laid out a plan. He suggested new marketing strategies, including a series of art showcases that would highlight the talents of her students, a way to get the community more involved, and a larger social media presence to reach potential clients who might not have heard about the studio yet. "You're doing things your way, Emma. That's what sets you apart," Liam said. "You don't need to copy what they're doing. You need to show your community what you offer, what you stand for." His words hit home. She had always believed in the power of art to bring people together, to help people heal and grow, and that was something no competitor could replicate. She just needed to find a way to make it known. Over the next few weeks, Emma implemented the strategies Liam suggested. She organized the first art showcase, bringing in local businesses to sponsor the event and showcase their products alongside the art. The turnout was better than she had expected, and the positive feedback was overwhelming. People loved the idea of supporting local artists while enjoying an evening of creativity and community. The social media campaigns gained momentum, and more people started talking about the studio. Emma felt a renewed sense of hope as she watched the numbers increase, more students enrolling, more inquiries about classes, and more people signing up for workshops. But as the success began to build, the pressure of running the studio began to weigh on her again. One night, while going over the financials, Emma realized that despite the growing attendance, the revenue still wasn't where it needed to be to cover the overhead costs. The stress of keeping everything running was taking its toll on her. It felt like she was caught in a never-ending cycle of trying to stay ahead, and no matter how hard she worked, it wasn't enough. That night, as she sat in her office, staring at the figures on the screen, the phone buzzed again. It was a text from Liam. "Hey, just checking in. How's everything?" Emma hesitated, feeling the weight of the situation. She had tried to keep a positive attitude, but the reality was hitting hard. She typed back, "It's tough. I don't know if I can keep this up. I'm doing everything I can, but it's just not adding up." Liam's response was immediate. "Don't give up now. You've come this far. Let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. You're building something that matters. This is just one obstacle. I'm with you every step of the way." His words, as always, brought her a sense of calm. She knew he was right. This wasn't the end, just another challenge that she had to face head-on. Emma wiped away the frustration that had clouded her mind. The next morning, she took a deep breath and made a list of all the things that needed to be addressed. Instead of focusing on the obstacles, she decided to focus on the solutions. She reached out to a few potential investors to discuss additional funding, and with Liam's help, she explored ways to reduce some of the studio's overhead costs. Slowly, things began to turn around. New ideas for fundraising came to life, and slowly but surely, the revenue began to match the growing attendance. Emma wasn't out of the woods yet, but for the first time in a while, she could see the light at the end of the tunnel. The studio was hers, and it was going to succeed. One step at a time, she was going to make sure of it. The journey had been full of twists and turns, but Emma was beginning to believe in herself and the future of the studio more than ever. Waitress gets ridiculed because of the scar on her face, then a millionaire appears, and Emma woke up to the sound of her alarm blaring, the bright morning light spilling through the window. She had been up late again, working on the studio's budget and planning for the upcoming community event. It had been weeks since the showcase, and though things were looking better, Emma knew there was still so much more to do. The financial pressure was still there, but she felt like she had finally found her footing. With each step forward, she could feel herself growing more confident. The challenges, while difficult, were now more like opportunities to prove that she could handle them. She stood up from her bed and went to the kitchen, making herself a quick cup of coffee. As the rich aroma filled the air, she thought about how much her life had changed since the studio opened. From the moments of self-doubt to now, where she felt like she was in control, like she was finally living the life she had dreamed of. But the journey was far from over. That morning, she had a meeting scheduled with potential investors who could help secure the studio's long-term future. These were the people who could give her the breathing room she needed, who could take her studio from a local business to something truly impactful. She had never been this nervous before, not even the first time she stood in front of her students. The stakes were higher now. She wasn't just fighting for her dream anymore. She was fighting for her community. Emma arrived at the meeting, dressed in her best business attire. She had spent the past few days preparing, gathering financial statements, and putting together a compelling case for why the studio was worth investing in. She was ready. The investors were already seated at the table when she entered the conference room. There were 4 of them, successful business people who had the power to change everything for Emma. She greeted them with a smile, trying to project confidence, but inside, her stomach was in knots. As the meeting began, Emma launched into her pitch, outlining the studio's growth, the positive impact it had already made on the community, and the plans she had for expanding its programs. She spoke passionately about the vision she had, about her desire to create a space where people could come together, learn, and heal through art. As she talked, she could see the investors listening intently, nodding along to her words. It was going well, but Emma knew that wasn't enough. She had to prove that the studio could be profitable, sustainable, and scalable. She spent the next hour discussing financial projections, showing them how the studio's expenses had been managed and where she planned to increase revenue. She was meticulous, making sure every point was clear and backed up by data. By the time she finished, she was exhausted, but she had made her case. The room was silent for a moment. Then one of the investors, a woman with short dark hair and sharp features, spoke up. "I have to admit, I'm impressed," she said. "You've clearly put a lot of thought into this, and I like your vision. But I need to know, how do you plan to handle the competition? The art world is very crowded, and there are always risks." Emma took a deep breath, remembering the pressure she had been feeling since the rival studio had opened nearby. It was a legitimate concern, one she had been grappling with for weeks, but now she had to answer. "I'm not worried about the competition," she said, her voice steady. "Yes, there are other studios, but none of them offer what we do. We're not just about selling art classes, we're about creating a community. The relationships we build with our students, the way we support them, that's what sets us apart. We offer something real, something that people can connect to. We're not just a business, we're a place for people to belong." The investors exchanged looks, and Emma held her breath. It was clear they were weighing her words carefully. After a long moment, the woman who had spoken earlier nodded. "You're right," she said. "Building a community is important. We've seen other businesses succeed because they foster strong connections with their customers. I think there's potential here." Emma's heart soared. It wasn't a guarantee, but it was the validation she needed. The investors asked a few more questions, and Emma answered each one with confidence. By the end of the meeting, they had agreed to invest. It was a huge step forward for the studio, a major milestone in Emma's journey. As she left the meeting, her head was spinning. She had done it. She had secured the funding she needed to keep the studio growing. But as she walked out of the building, her phone buzzed again. It was a text from Liam. "Congratulations. I knew you could do it. You've got this." Emma smiled as she typed back. "Thank you. I couldn't have done it without you." As the day went on, Emma found herself reflecting on everything that had led up to this moment. She had come so far, and though there would be more challenges ahead, she felt ready. The studio was hers, and it was going to thrive. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, Emma knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. This was only the beginning. Waitress gets ridiculed. Because of the scar on her face, then a millionaire appears, and Emma stood at the front of her art studio, looking around at the walls that had once been bare and now displayed vibrant pieces created by students from all walks of life. The studio had grown into something more than she had ever imagined. It was no longer just a place to learn about art. It had become a sanctuary, a community space where people found healing, connection, and a place to belong. The business had been thriving, but more importantly, Emma had found a purpose, something she had longed for her entire life. As she watched one of her students proudly hang up their work, she couldn't help but think back to where it all began. Just a few years ago, she had been a waitress, struggling to make ends meet, trying to hide behind the scar on her face that reminded her of all the things she had lost. Now, she was the owner of a successful business that was helping others find themselves through art. She had faced countless challenges along the way: self-doubt, financial struggles, and the ever-present pressure to prove herself. But each time life had thrown an obstacle her way, Emma had refused to back down. She had fought through the darkness, not just for the studio, but for herself. She had learned that the most important thing wasn't the fear of failure, but the courage to take the next step forward, even when everything seemed uncertain. Her phone buzzed on the counter, interrupting her thoughts. She picked it up to see a text from Liam. "How's everything going? I heard the new classes are packed." Emma smiled as she typed her response. "Yes, it's going great. We're full for the next few months. I can't believe how far we've come." She paused for a moment, then added, "Thank you. I couldn't have done it without you." Liam's reply came almost immediately. "You did all the hard work, Emma. I'm just proud to see you make it happen." Emma couldn't help but feel a surge of warmth. Liam had been there from the very beginning, supporting her, offering advice, and believing in her when she had doubted herself. She had always felt like the underdog, but with him by her side, she had come to understand that being the underdog didn't mean she couldn't succeed. It meant she had to work harder, be smarter, and never give up. As the days passed, the studio continued to grow. Emma expanded her programs, offering workshops, and even starting a scholarship fund to help underprivileged children attend the art classes. She wanted to give back to the community that had supported her along the way. She had learned that success wasn't just about financial gain. It was about making a difference in the lives of others. One evening, after closing the studio for the night, Emma sat alone in her office, reflecting on the journey she had been on. She thought about the days when she felt lost, unsure if she would ever escape the cycle of working to survive. But now, she was thriving. The scar on her face that once made her feel like an outsider was now just a part of her story. It didn't define her. It was simply a reminder of how far she had come. She had become the woman she had always hoped to be: strong, resilient, and capable of achieving her dreams. Her phone rang again, this time a call from her accountant. "Emma, I just wanted to let you know that the studio's finances are in great shape. Your revenue has surpassed projections for the last quarter, and your community outreach programs are really starting to make a difference." Emma's heart swelled with pride as she listened to the good news. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she could breathe easy. The financial strain that had once kept her up at night was now behind her. She had made it. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was thriving. As the call ended, Emma sat back in her chair and let out a deep sigh of relief. She knew the road ahead wouldn't always be easy. There would still be challenges, still moments of doubt, but she had learned how to face them head-on. She had proven to herself, and to others, that she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. The studio was hers, and it wasn't just a business. It was a symbol of everything she had overcome: the scar on her face, the judgment, the fear, and the uncertainty. She had built this from the ground up, and it was more than just a place to create art. It was a testament to the power of resilience, of believing in oneself even when the world told her she couldn't. As the lights in the studio flickered off for the night, Emma took one last look around. She had done it. She had turned her dream into reality. And in doing so, she had transformed not just her own life, but the lives of everyone who walked through the doors of her studio. She was no longer the woman hiding behind a scar. She was Emma, the woman who had fought for her dream and won. In this inspiring tale of overcoming adversity, we follow the journey of a waitress who was ridiculed because of the scar on her face, only to find herself transformed through the unexpected kindness of a millionaire. This is a story of resilience, determination, and the power of believing in oneself, showcasing how the support of a millionaire can change the course of someone's life. As the story unfolds, we see how the waitress builds her dream art studio, overcoming financial struggles and self-doubt, all while facing fierce competition from a rival studio. The story takes a turn when the millionaire becomes more than just a benefactor, offering not only financial support but also friendship and guidance, proving that sometimes the help we need comes from the most unexpected places. Throughout the story, we witness how this waitress becomes a successful businesswoman, transforming her passion into a thriving art studio, changing not just her own life, but the lives of others in her community as well. With every challenge she faces, she rises above it, showing us that with hard work, support, and determination, we can achieve our dreams no matter the obstacles in our way. This is one of the most powerful millionaire stories you will hear, a story that proves that anything is possible when you believe in yourself and the people around you. Discover how a simple act of kindness from a millionaire leads to a life-changing journey, and be inspired by this remarkable tale of courage, strength, and hope. Don't miss out on this incredible millionaire story, where a dream is realized against all odds, and a scar is no longer a symbol of weakness, but one of triumph.